You cannot shake your belief systems off unless something pushes you out of the way. And this is why so many of us have shitty lifestyles. We have pain, we have suffering, we have wrong relationships. We suffer. The suffering is not God trying to harm us. The suffering is God trying to help us to wake up. From a soul perspective, it is our soul trying to help us to go through various experiences to wake up. Welcome, Astrid. I'm Sal. And in this session, we would like to talk about fear. It's the one emotion that undermines all other emotions. It is a very powerful emotion. It is a very healthy emotion. But we seldom experience fear as a healthy emotion. I experience fear as a healthy emotion, as I have done in the past, when I've been in Spain and I've gone to this town very high up on a mountain, and I look over the edge and I get vertigo. I want to go back. I feel all queasy. And that is a totally healthy emotion. I don't want to fall over. My body is holding me back by generating these tensions within me, which I experience has been extremely uncomfortable. They've done experiments with little babies where the baby is crawling on a table on which there's a large pane of glass, very large pane of glass. And the baby will crawl on this pane of glass to the edge of the table, and then it stops. The biological programming from eons back tells us this is dangerous. And then on the other hand, we don't see it much these days, but certainly in the 50s, 60s, there's photos around the place of high-rise American buildings being built with metal structures. And you see these guys walking apparently fearless on what to any of us would give us a heart attack, just looking down, let alone moving there. So are these people fearless? And what is the difference?
How much of our human behavior is truly based on that unnatural fear of the ego mind, which is...
Because I just wanted to sort of lay the background.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you're fine. We will be coming to that. That fear is a healthy emotion. It stops us from hurting ourselves. And on the other hand, the opposite of that is that we know that people can overcome fear. The difference is experience. So although we have fear is built into us, it's very powerful, and it should be powerful. We don't want everybody just walking in front of buses or trains because they're unafraid of anything might happen to them. So fear is natural, is normal, and we need to embrace that. We can overcome fear through experience. And then there is somewhere in the middle where there are some people who are allegedly fearless. Then they don't tend to hang around for long. Because if you're totally fearless, you don't survive the world. And yet, even though we're very fearful, we still we have had to go and do things which generated fear. And the trick here is to experience the fear and do it anyway. So my oldest boy, when he was about 4, 5 years old, we were on holiday in Spain. We were in this beach, and it was very suddenly, it just went quite rough. We went to a certain part and it became very rough. And big waves came. And my instinct was to pick up my boy and lift him above my head. So the waves crashed all over me, but I was holding him above the waves. So why did I do that? My fear just suddenly got suspended because my protection of my boy became more important.
Mhm.
And people do this. They will jump into a pond to save a dog or some other animal or a child. I've seen numerous videos of people risking themselves for someone else. So we have this capacity for the sake of protecting something that we consider greater than us as an individual. Fear is not static. There are people who become paralyzed by fear. I think most of us have experienced that. People experienced that in the First or Second World War. So there are people who can experience their fear and they do it anyway. And there are people who experience their fear and become paralyzed by it. So what happens there? And this is where the mind comes in. A human being that is paralyzed by fear is paralyzed not by the fear, but by the mind. It's the mind that gets in the way and generates the paralyzation of the human being with some sort of image of some sort of catastrophic response. Yeah? Go on then. You want to say something? Go for it.
No, no, no. That's yeah. That's what I wanted to share also, because there are these two different layers of this fear, and yeah, because I wrote something down, which if you allow me to read it.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Let me think about it for a second. Can I allow Astrid to share this? Oh, go on then.
Because what I said, I wrote, for it seems it's only the mind which is responsible for all those fear-based responses, in this case, on and lack of feeling safe in whatever behavior, fear of the unknown, fear of the world, fear of other people, fear of abandonment, fear of being rejected, fear of not being good enough, fear of being left out, fear of lack, of of not having enough. All these fears which causes whatever behavior, where we spoke about rigidity and the flexibility, the isolation, manipulation, greed, fight, but also causes our eating and social behaviors. It seems almost all human actions and responses based on constantly being in our minds, based on living in our heads, are responses out of the one and only thing, which is fear. Our mind's a fear control station, a controlling mechanism, which is even used by the elites to hold control over humanity, also causing so many of our body issues. For example, our human heart, the mind which builds these walls around it. But the question is, knowing this, why are we still choosing for this fear based behavior? For this is also again based on fear of letting go this behavior, even though it's destructive, even though it's this looping cycle. This fear based controlling mechanism out of safety, insecurity, instability, which we allow having this control over us, which unconsciously makes us believe it still is safer to hold on to that behavior than letting go because it brings us safety, quote unquote, for we are familiar to it. So again, it's the fear based controlling mechanism which tries to protect for the unknown. Then there is this. Is this because at some point we humans we choose to abandon the source only to experience? It seems to turn fear into love by living from the heart, to take control over our mind, to go out of it by being in the present is our only way back out, our only way back to source.
I wish you'd sort of split that up into little sections. That's a big mouthful. I've even forgotten the questions I had in the beginning. Uh,
Yeah, but this
so
is what
what?
I wrote about the this.
Yes, for sure. And everything you say is valid. I'm simply making a point that you said too much in one go, and it's hard for us to break it down and explore. Yeah,
Okay,
you have to go back to the beginning and just say a little bit, and we can discuss that,
okay, you can cut
and
it
then
out
say a bit
later.
more.
You can cut it out later.
No, I don't. I don't need to cut it out. Like, sort of, you've got some sort of salient comments there, which are useful and valid. Um, but you then go on and you rattle on so many more others that I, for one, I've lost the connection with the first thing that you
Yeah,
wanted to
okay,
explore or
okay. Then
share.
I will share the first part.
Go on then.
Um, we spoke about the rigidity and the flexibility, and after that, I was wondering this must be a pattern only because of this underlying fear. For it seems it's only the mind which is responsible for all those fear based responses and lack of feeling safe.
Okay, stop there.
Yeah,
Pause for a minute.
yeah,
So, that's valuable what you just shared, and you're right. It is the mind. It's the mind that is responsible for all the ills, pretty much, that we experience in today's world. Um, so, what I was trying to share before was I was coming to the mind and how some of us were at the mercy of the mind, and some people are not. And the difference is experience. Yeah, there's an experience element, but some of it has become part of who we are. I'll give you an example. When I was between the ages of 8 and 10, I'd had a disastrous childhood, totally traumatized, um, and I was sent to this orphanage run by priests. The priest was, or priest, they were sociopathic. They were so focused on their own salvation and not going to hell, they couldn't even see us. Whenever I spoke in the class, I would get it wrong. If I drew something, it was wrong. If I spoke in a certain way, I couldn't pronounce something, it was wrong. And they hit me. They hit me again and again and again for 2 years. I became stubborn. I refused to answer. I refused to do anything. I was trying to hang on to my sanity, if you like, my little bit of will. Well, I left Spain. I came here and forgot about this. And nearly 50, I'm 70 now, nearly 60 years later, I was doing classes, art classes. Jenny and I were doing art classes. And as the teacher began to tell us about different methods and what to do, I became aware that I was going blank. I was going woolly in my head. And I realized that my fears from my past were affecting me. Listening to this teacher about getting it right. And then that made me think of years before when I was doing martial arts, and we would be standing around for long periods of time, listening, looking at the teacher, demonstrating this, that, the other. And my piriformis muscle in my right leg would start to contract. And I'd be standing there feeling really uncomfortable. And it was the same thing. I was in a classroom, the teacher was saying things, and my body was reacting in a fearful way. My mind, I was going woolly. I couldn't sort of follow the sequences. The only way I could do it was to video, and then I'd be home and I would practice that, and I'd be really good. But when I was in the class learning, I was rubbish. I couldn't learn. I could not learn. I don't think I can even today. If I'm in a group setting and someone's telling me what to do, this, that, the other, I can't do it. My body still reacts. I am a tree that has grown up gnarled and distorted, and I cannot change that. I cannot change that distortion. It's been built into my system. So that happens for a lot of us. And, I've practiced a lot of things, and I shouldn't really have that fear, but I have. It is beyond my ability to change, to alter. And a lot of us have that. We have a fear which has been unnaturally created within us in our childhoods. And it affects us for most, if not all, of our lives. And we need to acknowledge this, that we are damaged human beings. And there are fears which are beyond us. And there are fears which we can do something about it. Like, if I can experience the fear, then I can do it anyway, even though I am afraid. But if that fear does not manifest physically, because it's so deeply buried in our psyche, into our structure, that all we get is the side effects, i.e. like going a bit blurry, a bit sort of woolly-headed, there's very little we can do about that. Apart from acknowledge, this is who I am, and work with it, work with our limitations, whilst acknowledging there's a limitation. And the other thing I would say is that fear has got so many flavors. So, for example, I will be afraid at a very deep level of being in a classroom because it evokes that childhood fear. But I will defend myself against someone who attacks me.
Yeah.
So I may still be afraid. I may be afraid of, because, I'm not stupid. I'll be afraid of getting hurt. But my need to survive, my ego need to survive, will still motivate me to defend myself. So my anger So my anger rises to the surface and I will defend my space. But I fear my childhood fear of something that happened so long ago, which is so built in and I can't even clear it, even though I've explored it many times. It's insubstantial in the present. And it just makes me woolly-headed. Whereas a physical threat clears my head.
Yeah, but
So,
this is related to the experience you had. So that's why in this
yes,
situation you act the way you do, and in another situation you totally act different because one
yes.
situation is related to your trauma experience in the past. So that's then the mind takes over the from the trauma
What I'm trying to
situation. Yeah.
say, is that we need to acknowledge, one, that we're damaged, two, that we've got fears which are beyond us, and three, that those, just having a fear there doesn't mean that we are now catatonic when exposed to any other fear. So we may be unable to deal with one fear from the past, but that doesn't stop us from engaging in a healthy way via our anger to fears in the present,
Yeah, but
if there is something that affects us in that
but
way.
then there is this question about the basic fears, about the security. Wait a minute, I wrote it somewhere here. The safety, the insecurity, the instability, the basic fear, which is a collective thing, which is represented in the world to us. This is not only related to a traumatic experience. This is a deeper layer inside of us, which lets the mind take control over the heart. So that's what's your opinion about that? It's
All right. So now we're talking at societal level, and I think most of us have experienced the indoctrination that we have to do what we're told, and most of us have been conditioned through films, cinema, videos, that there are powers that can incarcerate us, that can punish us in different ways. And those are visceral fears.
It's early evening in September 2017. 3 police cars pull up outside a house in Melbourne's northern suburbs. The disability pensioner inside the house is mentally ill and very distressed. He's been withdrawing from the pain medication prescribed after back surgery. John's medical carers have called police, worried at his deteriorating state. Police dispatch notes warn John may confront them and try to provoke them into shooting him. He also has a minor assault on his record from 10 years ago. But from behind his locked screen door, he repeatedly pleads with them to leave him alone.
No, please leave. I don't want to fucking talk! Fuck off! Fuck off! Get off my fucking property!
Not gonna happen, mate. Open the door. Mate, we don't want to break open the door.
I don't want to! I'm going for withdrawal!
Come on, John. Just want to have a show.
No! I can't! I'm alright! I just gotta get through this! Alright? Get the crowbar and you have to shoot me!
Come on, John.
The police notes state that when John opened the door, he came at them with 2 raised fists. But the video appears to show him fending off an officer coming at him with capsicum spray. John has asked not to be fully identified.
Do you remember being hit?
We've got people who who go to prison all the time. We would call them criminals. A lot of them are not criminals. A lot of them are. They don't seem to be afraid of going to prison. I am afraid of going to prison. I expect you are. Why? Because we've never been. It's the unknown. All of us fear the unknown. So we're afraid of something we haven't experienced.
Yeah.
And this is a power held over us at the level of society.
Oh, okay. But isn't also something we created for ourselves because we lost the connection with source? And the society uses that to control and manipulate the whole of humanity.
Well, not necessarily. I'm in connection with my heart. I'm in connection with something bigger. I still have fears. I'm still human. My biological ego is still here. It never goes away. Yeah. The fact that I can put it to one side doesn't mean that some intrinsic fears are not there. I'm afraid of going to prison because I've never been to prison.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a person who is focused on the world. I don't want to change. I do want to change the world, but I don't want to change the world by changing the political system, by changing the people who are in power. I want to change the world by changing ourselves, one person at a time. Is what we do in ourselves. And I still acknowledge that there are people who do need to change the world. They do need to reflect the goodness which is within mankind. They do need to stand up to authority. Some people need to stand up to authority. Someone has to do it. I'm not advocating violence of any sort. I'm not going there. I'm simply saying that people do need to stand up to what is unfair, to what is ruthless, to what is demeaning, to what is psychopathic. And we've experienced that in the past, but we haven't gone there because we have an innate fear of the powers that be. We're powerless, you know. In America, they are a republic. They're not a democracy, they're a republic. And the republic believes in the state serving the people, not the people serving the state. And so within the republic, they're encouraged to stand up to the state if the state takes away their freedoms. And to that extent, they're encouraged to have arms, to bear arms, i.e. to become a militia. In America at the moment, they've been trying to change the system from a republic to a democracy. And they've been doing this for years. Now they talk about, in America, if you listen to all the politicians, they all talk about democracy. They're not a democracy, they're a republic where the rights of the individual are foremost. In the UK, we don't have that. We are a democracy. In many parts of the world, they are democracy. They talk about democracy. And so the individual, we're not encouraged to defend ourselves. So we are pretty powerless as an individual. So you stand out as an individual, they come, they take you away. The power that we have is to actually to group together as many people as one voice and say, no, I will not do this. I will not go down this road. This is not what I haven't elected you to tell me how to be. Look at the World Economic Forum.
Wealthiest figures are currently in the Swiss town of Davos for the World Economic Forum's meeting that started yesterday. Many online commentators have claimed that the event involves a group of elites manipulating global events for their own gain. According to AP, experts say what was once a conspiracy theory found throughout the internet's underground has now hit the mainstream.
The theme of the meeting in 2020 was called The Great Reset, which envisioned how changes could be implemented to build a more sustainable future. This theme has been referenced by many well-known names, including Fox News' Tucker Carlson and Sandy Hook denier Alex Jones, who largely view the plan as an elite conspiracy to consolidate world power and implement control over society. But Twitter Files journalist Michael Schellenberger tweeted yesterday, spokespersons for the World Economic Forum say the Great Reset, eating insects instead of meat, and you'll own nothing and be happy are conspiracy theories, but they're not. In fact, all of them originated at Davos and from the World Economic Forum's own website. Now, WEF is deleting those, of course. This article that was reportedly on the website in 2016 has since been deleted, says, welcome to 2030, I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better.
They're dictating the world. Who stole them? Who stole them that they can do these things for us? We've got people like Bill Gates, who is cloud sitting all over the place. Who gives him the right to do something like that?
Bill Gates thinks of himself as God, in control of the solar system. And that's why Bill Gates is now backing something called sun-dimming technology that would reflect sunlight out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing global cooling. Ooh, that's not fraught with risks. You thought gain-of-function research on pathogens was dangerous. Try that. But that hasn't stopped Harvard University. Its scientists are testing that technology by spewing calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial.
But they take it because we are powerless. We're powerless as single voices. So why do we not stand together as groups? What is stopping us? And what stops us is fear. That it is a fear that has been inculcated in us since we were children. And it's not about respect for authority, it's about fear of authority. It's the fear that they can fine us, they can take our property away, they can put us in prison, they can they take our liberties away. And so as individuals, we're powerless. And we're not sociopaths, we experience emotions. And fear is a healthy emotion. So to have a healthy fear of someone who has the power to deny me my individual freedoms, that is a healthy response, okay, under the circumstances. So we experience this fear, and the only way to overcome this sort of fear is like the guy who walks through on a high-rise building on these H-beams. He has learned to put his fear to one side. He knows he can do this, and it's not the end of the world. But for me, going to prison, and I'm not saying I want to go to prison, all right? I don't want to do that. But the experience takes away the fear to some extent. This is why when I was a young lad, I was afraid of being hurt. I wouldn't get into any fight. I was really afraid. It was an irrational fear. When I got into martial arts, I realized I can take a bit and still stay focused. When my children were young, we would play rough exercises. I would throw them all over the bed, and they would love it. So when they were at school, they weren't afraid of bullies because they weren't afraid of physical pain, because they experienced pain in the rough and tumble and they survived and they were fine. So this is what I mean by experience. We're all fearful, and some of that fear is healthy, and we need to expose ourselves to experience No prison for me, okay? We need to expose ourselves to experience to know that we can do more than we think we can.
We are not powerless.
We're not powerless. But since we're young children, we have been brought up with this model of the world that tells us we're powerless.
Yeah.
And it's part of how we see the world. And it's problematic because that fear that we're brought up with is actually engineered. It's not accidental. It is, if I'm in control of the world and I want everybody to do what I say, why am I in control of the world? Well, what's my need to be in control of the world? Well, clearly psychopathic in nature.
Yeah.
Because if you're a healthy human being, you don't want to control anybody else. You don't have any need to control anyone else. Live and let live. So I'm on top of the world now. I want everybody to do what I say. How do I do that? I'm going to get some people underneath me. They're going to be like my second in command. And I'm going to give them some labels. And I'm going to say, right, you are important. But they're important because they keep me on top of the world. Okay? So now these guys, they've got labels. Call them counts or whatever. Some sort of like the with the monarchy, right? They got this sort of pyramid down structure of people who are different stratas of society. They have more and more, less and less power as they go down the list. Eventually, you get to the bottom rung of the enforcers. And who are the enforcers? Well, this is the police and the military. Are they there to protect the people? No, they're there to maintain the structure, to keep everybody in place. They used to be, once upon a time, supposed to be there for the sake of keeping the peace for the people. But for quite a few hundred years, it is. But it's always been thus, right? Whenever someone takes over, they create a hierarchy of power. And the whole purpose is to control the labor of the people at the bottom. Because ultimately, society is about labor. It's about people doing things for other people. So how do you maintain that? Well, now, you don't want the people at the bottom to think that they're in hell. So you have to make them think they're in heaven in some way. Well, in our culture, they do this with films, videos, computers, basically distractions. It used to be in Roman times, bread and circuses. Yeah. So you've always got to distract people somehow. Then the other one, the Machiavellian approach, is you have to unite people against an external enemy. There's got to be an enemy beyond us. How do you do that? You ferment fear in the group. So people are now unified by the fear of someone else who's going to attack us. The fact that it's us who is going to attack them, that's another story, but we're only doing it to defend ourselves. So, I mean, that is the existential dilemma of this fucked up world we're in right now. That we're so easily manipulated by fear, which we pick up by osmosis. It's in everything. It's everywhere. And they try to monopolize our rage against someone else. Divide and conquer. The British allegedly invented that. Divide and conquer. Well, we have divide and conquer within civilization.
Yeah.
I mean, terrorism. Was there terrorism in the first 50 years of the 20th century? I don't think so. Terrorism is a recent event. And through terrorism, everybody's afraid. I mean, I don't want to go conspiracy theories, but where does terrorism come from? who's behind it. What, why are people complaining in that way? I mean, that is another story. The point here is that fear is being fomented in societies to be manipulated in different ways. I mean, the latest act of terrorism happened between 2019 to 2023, those few years. Fear was generated, and about half the population went along with it, like lambs to the slaughter. So
yeah. And that divide and conquer even with your neighbors. Then the old people, then were the youth, they were then the not vaccinated. They divide and conquer constantly the whole day long.
They even try to get people to talk against their neighbors.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
That's fear. That is real.
Yeah.
And now we've got the hate laws. Certainly in Scotland, we have the hate laws. If you say certain things, you are in fear of actually going to prison. People have gone to prison for saying things they shouldn't in this free society. Okay, we're in a free society, democratic. We're in a democratic free society. So if you say something someone else doesn't like, off you go to prison. But this is where we are in the world. There is a system of control that is becoming more and more and more oppressive. If there is nothing to fear, you can say anything. Democracy defines what truth is. And the rest of us, we either go along with it or we fear, because of what they're going to do with us. I don't particularly want to go down that road because it becomes very politicized. And
then there is this question: is the fear really innate, or is it just a program? And is trust more innate than fear, but is overruling everything we were connected with?
Okay, so fear is innate. Fear is an organic response to the environment. We've got biological fears, DNA, totally healthy.
Yeah.
But we've also got mind fears, which is the fear, the mind activates the emotion of fear to create a response. For example, to suppress our expression. So my mind, the usual fears are the fear of being ostracized from the group. That is a very powerful fear. It's actually biological fear. But the mind hijacks that, and the powers that be hijack that. Cults hijack that. Yeah. So many political groups will hijack that fear.
What about the safety and the survival? The unknown.
Well, survival.
Yeah.
Well, the individual survives better in the group. So this is why it's the core fear is to be ostracized from the book, from the group means death at some sort of visceral level. And that underlies a lot of our fears in society come from that fear.
Yeah.
But it comes from the mind, but this has been programmed by others as well. Yeah, but it even happens at home. Just within the family circle, the child very quickly learns that if they behave in some way that the parents do not like, that they may be ostracized in some way or other. So that fear becomes, the germ of that fear goes in there very easily, very quickly. So the child learns that one very easily. And then you go to school. And then people gang up. Children gang up together. If they don't like someone else for whatever reason, that child is then ostracized. And that's a horrible experience. The child then wants to ingratiate themselves and they want to become part of the group, part of the mold. They want to belong, even though it may be horrible. They want to feel safe. So it becomes part of who we are very powerfully. Then we grow up, we become adults. And now that fear gets us to do things that if we were more rational, we wouldn't do it. You know, I mean, I keep going back to this period between 20 and 2023, but many people there, their fear was so visceral, it was so in your face.
Wasn't it also based on security and safety and fear of death? There were also many layers in that, built in that fear program, because they know there are layers in it.
Yeah, but there were ridiculous things in it. Like, for example, if I inject myself or someone else injects me with something that will protect me from something else, what do I care whether you take it or not?
I know.
If I have been protected, why should I care what happens to you from that perspective?
Yeah, you have a point in there. But when someone is totally controlled by their own fear, there is no space for any other thoughts about the situation they're in. So they're totally ruled by fear. There is nothing else can come in. Every day, every half an hour, on the radio, fear, 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 fear. Then how the hell is there space for anything else to come in? And that's the trap people are then in without even knowing that they are trapped in fear.
Well, that is the unfortunate thing about the world we live in, that those who control the world, they control all the means of communication. So people, in theory, people should be able to think for themselves. We've spoken about this before, but people don't think for themselves. People take someone else's word for it, even though it may not seem logical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a whole lot of people that believe on flat earth. They believe about the flat earth. You know, I mean, the Greeks knew the earth was round. We know the earth is round because we see all the stars, all the planets, things rotate. We can see that. And yet, in spite of all that, people believe the earth is flat. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because something within them, and they speak like they're clever people, but something within them has lost the ability to discriminate. I've listened to many of them, and even though they're shown clear examples that the earth is round, they just cannot go there. It's like they got filters. It stops them from exploring something different. And the problem is that as we grow up, we do grow up twisted, all of us. And just like I had my fear of being walked by the priests, and it affects me to this day, so other people have got a fear of not being part of the group, being ostracized from the group. And that is more important. They're not necessarily aware of that. That is like deep down, it affects them like me going woolly affects me. And so they cannot go there. They're stuck. You know, when I was a little boy, in fact, right through my life, I've always been isolated from the group. And that has been my strength and the problem. It has been my strength because it means I've always looked at society from the outside in. And it is a problem because now that I need to communicate with society, I am not very good at it. I'm really not very good at communicating with the group. My oldest boy, he's always been right in the group and he's excellent. He's got friends galore all over the place. He knows how to network with everybody. He's got huge groups of people. He's only 35, but so many people know he exists. Okay. Me, I've always been on the outside. Now I'm trying to get into the inside so I can communicate. And I don't really know how to do this. I'm working my way in slowly, but I'm not a groupie. I don't belong in a group. I am truly an individual. And that is problematic in the world as it is today. The world doesn't like individuals. So that is the problem. This is why people find it so difficult. It is their fear of being ostracized from the group. And how do we get through to people like that? I don't know. I don't know that we can.
No, I don't think so. It's their own experience. And when you notice someone doing what he or she is doing, yeah, we just can see what's happening there, but not even judge about it because it's yeah, I don't know. Like with the COVID situation, of course you want people to see through, but if they can't, you cannot. There's nothing you can do about it. It's their own.
There are many people who are very clever.
Yeah.
And they think they have reason on their side. And I've heard so many of them. But they've got blind spots in their psyche. There are areas of their world where they don't go. They won't look at certain things. But they would consider themselves to be very rational, follow the science, very reasonable. And probably we could say that about all of us. We've all got blind spots.
Yeah.
Because we cannot have enough information to know what the truth is about everything. However, again, this is used against us because the conspiracy theories, as I read somewhere, they're conspiracies which become fact at a later stage. So what begins as conspiracies tends to end up as fact. However, what I've noticed over the last 20 odd years is that beginning with 9/11, that was the big wake-up call for me. When something like that happens, you look at it, I looked at it, and I knew straight away, this is nonsense. To me, it was totally obvious. Never mind what anybody says, no one can convince me that our building, which is on fire, comes down in a blaze of dust within an hour.
Moments later.
One plane colliding with one twin tower. Oh my God.
It's collapsing. It's collapsing. Roll your left. Watch out. It's collapsing. I get it. The North Tower is coming down.
Oh my God.
Of 2017. The fire. The operator of the London Fire Brigade received a call that day at 54 minutes after midnight. Behelu Kabede, a tenant from flat number 16 on the 4th floor, called the firefighter.
It It defies my understanding of the universe. It's not possible. I knew that wasn't true, whatever they say. And as soon as they said, oh, and an FBI, I think FBI had found a passport of one of the hijackers. We've got a building which is 120 something levels, which is all crushed down with dust everywhere, smoke everywhere. Well, not smoke, dust everywhere. And this guy, out of this rubble, he picks up a passport of one of the hijackers on a plane. I mean,
yeah, but
it doesn't
where
compute. Okay, it doesn't compute.
That situation was the entrance for you to open up. I
It
didn't.
was.
I later on heard about the conspiracy of this, what happened there, but for me it wasn't the entrance to awake. So everyone has his own entrance to wake up. And
So my point was that yes, I woke up, hello, the world's not as I think it is, and these guys are lying and they're willing to do all these things. My point was that from that conspiracy that began and took over the internet, suddenly about 50 different conspiracies about what actually happened. Where did they come from? And in hindsight, it appears that there are those who have an invested interest in muddying the waters. So when people begin to discover the truth about something, you now begin to throw more conspiracies from different angles, which are more and more ridiculous. And then people can say, oh, conspiracy theory, he's a Mad Hatter. He's a conspiracy theorist. He needs to wear his sort of metal hat or whatever. So it becomes a way of telling the masses, don't listen to that guy. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's mad. He's talking rubbish. So then people don't have to explore what the guy is saying. All they have to do is label the guy or girl as a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
And that is how they do it. They label people. So you don't have to think. So we've got highly rational people who have gone to university and all manner of things. And yet, when it comes to looking at information that might expose a certain truth, they don't go there.
They're not able to see through.
No. So they settle on the label. They find a label. He's a commie, he's a sex pervert, he's a conspiracy theorist. There's hundreds of labels out there, I'm sure.
But isn't that also a mechanism out of fear and safety? Because your own truth, if someone's pulling the triggers out of your own truth, then what then? So
We come to the existential dilemma that we are creatures that like to be in the group to be safe, and we don't like to be ostracized. We don't like to be placed apart from the group. And the fear of that is so deep. So you've got to be a bit radical to be able to confront that, to be able to accept coming out of the group. Now, the good thing is, in the Victorian era, belonging to the group was absolutely everything. So everybody conformed in all manners of ways. Everybody was in best behavior. It was totally essential. That gradually became more and more relaxed. And other groups have formed as a result once you get past the hippie era. But by and large, the majority of people still conform because the indoctrination is relentless. It's ongoing, continuous. So thinking outside the group is really difficult because you have to confront your fear your anxieties of being isolated from the group. What is happening now is that there are other groups forming outside of mainstream groups. So, and we found that during the 2023 era, when many people were saying, we're not doing this, for their own reasons, they could see that that wasn't a good way to go, and they decided not to. And they began to group together. And I joined groups like that. And these groups, they were still fearful, but they were fearful in other ways. The problem with humanity is that, as you mentioned earlier on, we are cut off from our hearts, by and large. We all have access, but, it's few moments far in between. And the reason why we're cut off from our hearts is because we have suppressed so many emotions when we're young. Usually there's about 2 or 3 emotions, core emotions, that become suppressed within us. One core one and a couple of others, sort of halfway through. And we go through life, and these core emotions that we have suppressed interfere with the connection with the heart to a greater or lesser extent in different ways. Behind that is all fear. And behind that is the mind. So the mind is trying to protect the emotion. The mind's trying to protect the organism. And it generates certain emotion, or it suppresses certain emotions, and we end up having reactive emotions. So rather than experiencing the emotion, we react to the emotion. And then we have conflicts with other people, and confusion reigns. So we separate from the main group, but nothing has truly changed, in that we're still at the mercy of these other emotions. So these groups of people, they then come together, but the same thing happens. There's always someone in that group who wants to be at the top, who wants to be the leader, who wants to tell other people what to do. There's still fears, there's still conflicts, there's still manipulations. There's simply microcosms of the bigger macrocosms.
Yeah.
That
mechanism is still there. The human behavior, that mechanism. Yeah.
And that is problematic for us, because we need to move beyond this. We need to, you see, the world as it is a reflection of who we are collectively. And it's self-fulfilling, because the people that control the world, they're reflecting us, but they're also keeping the fences in to keep us in that space. So we are kept in that place of ignorance of ourselves and the world.
But isn't that also an outside mirror of ourselves being in the mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
For when you step out of the mind, which is that program, which is also from the outside reflected on us.
Look at the world. Look at the world.
Yeah.
The mind. What are we? We are coming from the mind. We're judgmental. We're critical. Yeah. We punish others. I'm sure there's a lot more. That's all I can think of for now. You look at society. It's full of rules and regulations, punishments when you don't obey the regulations, critical of our actions, and very judgmental. We exist in a very judgmental society. We have to conform. We're expected to conform. We're not expected to think for ourselves. We are told what to do, how to be. You must put your seatbelt on, because if you don't, you're going to get fined. It's for your own good.
But also what our mind does with us. That's also exactly the same, the way the mind, what the mind does with ourselves. Isn't that, we can not finger point only at what's outside of us, because there's something to say about what the mind affects humans.
I agree. When we're young, we don't grow up healthy. We are subjected to the indoctrination of the world from our parents, from television, from our peers, school, teachers. The world is constantly telling us how we have to be. They're telling us, be this person. How many people talk about being a human being? We're always talking about the person. The person is what society has created for us, and we have, we've gone along with it because they start as young. It's what I think it was the Jesuits. Give me a child up to the age of 6 or 7, and they're mine for life. I can fill their head with my belief systems. They'll never be able to shake them off. Yeah. And there's so much truth in that. You cannot shake your belief systems off unless something pushes you out of the way. And this is why so many of us have shitty lifestyles. We have pain, we have suffering, we have wrong relationships. We suffer. The suffering is not God trying to harm us. The suffering is God trying to help us to wake up. Looking at it from a Christian viewpoint for a second. Yeah. From a soul perspective, it is our soul trying to help us to go through various experiences, to wake up and smell the roses. The world is not hell. The world is heaven, but we see it as hell. And we see it as hell because we're so indoctrinated. We're so lost in our fears. And the indoctrination is inside of us. It's been brought in from outside, but it's now inside of us. And we generate that as much as anybody else. It's a self-feeding mechanism. We need to get off this matrix. And the only way we can do that is through the pain and suffering that we have in our relationships, in our experiences with the group, with other individuals, with our work, because we're simply reflecting our internal pain and suffering. It's there in us already, but we're not aware of that. We're simply reacting to it in different ways. So we're always having misunderstandings with other people. We seldom get to the truth of the emotions within us that need to be expressed, and we don't do that. We think it's too painful, so we suppress them.
Yeah, and because the mind rules us, we allow the mind to rule our lives in every aspect.
Well, we are the mind. So it's not that we allow the mind to rule us. It's simply that we're trapped, and we cannot fight the mind. We cannot fight our minds. You cannot fight fire with fire. What we resist persists. So the only way to get off the mind,
to go into
to be
heart.
able to see,
to go in your heart.
No. Yes and no. The only way to get out of this is to go into our bodies. We need to go into our physical body. When we're in our mind, we are disassociated from our bodies. And so the only way to get rid of this controlling force is literally to start to focus on our bodies. And this is not easy because we're up here, because we've got so much trauma in our bodies that we've now disassociated from our bodies. So we need to, the first effort we need to make is to connect with our bodies. When we walk, when we dance, when we do martial arts, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, doesn't matter what it is, running, cycling, we start to connect with our bodies. And is beginning that process of connection. That's the first step. Then we need to connect with our breath. We need to be in touch with how we breathe, because it's through our breath that we suppress our emotions. So we get in touch with our emotions. And as we begin to release emotions, then gradually we start to make a connection with our hearts. The heart needs to get a look in, because the heart and the emotions are intertwined. It's like a motorway between the two of them, or it should be. But to get there, first of all, we need to clear the access to the heart from the emotions. We need to connect with the emotions. We need to release the pain, the suffering. I cannot forgive another person if I'm full of anger, rage, victimhood. I've got to release the emotions that hold me back. That was true with my mother, for example. You know, I spent a lifetime trying to connect with my heart. And there were moments, but those moments always came because I had deep conflict with another person. Like my first one was, I was about 28, and this girl and I would come together. We were living together. She was going to go back to South Africa. We both knew that, but we stayed together. Then she went off for a month to Europe, and then she decided to come back and see me one last time. I was outside my house fixing the car, and suddenly she appeared through the door, and I just burst into tears. And we spent a few weeks together, and it was heaven. And then she went to South Africa. And then the pain in my heart, it was excruciating. It was the first time I ever opened my heart to anyone. And that was important. You know, had to open my heart little bits at a time. And that's how we do it. Or rather, that's how our soul, or God, whatever you want to call it, that's how our soul will generate relationships, events in our life, which force us to confront certain aspects of ourselves. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I really think that there's also this lost connection with the source, which really is inside of us, which by experiencing all of this more and more tries us again to connect to that this connection we all lost. This being disconnected from that source, and by everyone's own experiences, more and more the soul or source tries us to get back to where we
I'll tell you another one. I was an acupuncturist, and I'd had this old guy. He'd been with me for 10 years. Then he stopped coming. Oh, what's happened? Went to find out. He was 81 already. And he was in hospital. He was really ill. The next thing I know is he's dead. I found out when he was going to be cremated. And I was speaking with the mortuary, and so you can come and see him if you want. Oh, okay. So I went with my family at the time. They stayed outside, and I went in there, and I saw him dead. And out of nowhere, I was grief-stricken. I've never been so grief-stricken in my life. And I cried and I cried for about 10 minutes. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't just stay here crying. And I didn't understand. And I left and I went outside. My wife was there. And I went home and I wrote a poem because I had no words to describe what I was feeling. And then at the funeral, I was there, and then I sort of recited the poem with my wife and children out where he was put. And it had nothing to do with him. Yes, I was really, really fond of him, but it had nothing to do with him. That grief was the grief of my having been separated from my mother when I was 3 years old. And then having been separated from the nun that looked after me from between 3 and 8 years old, and been thrust into this orphanage with the priests. And that grief had been inside me for a lifetime. And it accidentally got released. Was it accidentally? Or was it that the time had come and meant to be? And it was so, so deep and so raw. When my mother died, I didn't experience that grief. But I knew that she was going to die roughly about a year or so beforehand. And many, many times I focused on her death, on the time of her death. And my grief came to the fore. But it was never painful like that time. The time with the death of that client, that 10 minutes of sheer raw grief, I released a lifetime of grief. So when my mother died, or rather when I was focusing on the death of my mother for that year beforehand, which I did many, many times, I experienced grief, but it was healthy grief. It was the grief of letting go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I was no longer suppressing my grief. I'd suppressed it for a lifetime, and I didn't know it. People said, my mother used to say, "You're so serious." Well, yes, you become very serious. If you suppress your grief, you become very serious.
I'm familiar with that.
But that's what we do. And grief is fear. Yeah, it's always fear, but we suppress it, gets convoluted, a different source. So we want to get to our hearts, and this is how we do it. We have to experience all our fears. I will put a label. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to experience the fear of prison. So when I say I want to experience all our fears, I mean, we need to experience all the fears that we're suppressing within us. Yeah. And the only way we can do that is through the experiences of our life, going through the pain. Yeah, we have to expose ourselves to love. We have to expose ourselves to loss. We have to expose ourselves perhaps to ridicule. People are different. We need to be able to expose ourselves and experience it.
Mm.
Life is tough. Life is tough for all of us. I won't minimize that, but the time has come for us to confront our fears, our existential fears. We're not going to change the world unless we confront our fears. And as we confront our fears, so we open up the gateway to our hearts. And when we open up the gateways to our hearts, then the world will change. The world changes because we change. If we don't change and we change the world, we're going to get exactly more of the same under a different guise. It's always been like that in the past. If you don't believe me, I'm going to tell you, look at British politics. You look at the politicians as they've changed from one to the next to the next. Every time a different one comes in, they tell you they're going to do this or the other. It never changes. It's always the same. It's always more of the same. And what is the same? The same is greater and greater loss of freedom. We lose gradually. They've been taking our freedoms away. They've been instilling more and more fears in us. And that's where we are in the world. And we can't change it, but we can change ourselves. And as we change ourselves, then we collectively can change the world. It's the only way that true change will come. I'm sure there are many halfway stages, but this is the only true way of changing the world to what it used to be. The world used to be like this. It wasn't always like this. Before the last cataclysm, people did live in love. Relations were good between people. People were not ruled by fear. I'm sure they had fears, but they were not ruled by them. So,
Thanks, Al. Thank you.
Shall we stop here?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Again.
Well, no, thank you, Astrid. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll stop here. Thank you very much, Astrid.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy our conversations, they're a little bit weird sometimes, but nevertheless, if you can put up with some of the weirdness and hang on to the good stuff, because we're all human. And so we've all got prejudices and ways of looking at the world, but there is good stuff in here. And if you can hang on to the good stuff and make allowances for the not so good stuff, then thumbs up, give us a like, help us to disseminate this far and wide. Anyway, many thanks for now. Thanks, Astrid.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye all.